In this episode, I have the pleasure of talking with Marco Riaskoff. For over 40 years, Marco was the driving force behind the legendary Master Classical Pianist series at the world-famous Concertgebouw in Amsterdam. This iconic series has hosted all generations of piano greats, from titans like Horowitz, Alfred Brendel, to modern masters like Daniil Trifonov and Arcadi Volodos. Marco has a treasure trove of incredible stories to share, shaped by decades of working with the most extraordinary pianists in history. It was a challenge to edit this interview. There was so much fascinating material, but I think what remains paints a vivid picture of this remarkable man and his deep passion for music, especially the piano.
And many pianists go on after more than 80, like look, Marta Argerich.
Yeah.
She just became 82, but she plays like a teenager. She's unbelievable. These, of course, are, exceptions. But still, violinists cannot play at that high age. Nathan Milstein was an exception. Gitlis also played very well at a high age, but because it's more physical, you have to hold the violin in your hand. And the bow, it's physically nearly impossible. As a pianist, you are a pianist, you have something to support,
Yeah.
But anyhow...
but also in jazz, like there is Roy Haynes. He's a drummer, he's 99, and he's just unbelievable. We have, here in the Netherlands, we have an iconic drummer, John Engels, 89.
Yeah.
And he plays like 4 or 5 concerts a week, like a devil. It's amazing.
But look at you played with Toet Tielemans.
Yeah.
Well?
Yeah. The reason why Toets had to stop because of a hearing problem.
Yeah.
Other than that, he was still fine.
Yeah.
But he became insecure because he couldn't hear himself back, and then, that's...
But of course, the thing is, if you are so well known, and you're, for instance, I saw Maya Plisetskaya, one of the greatest dancers ever, dance The Dying Swan in a ballet festival in Nervi. Of course, she had incredible arms, but, the arabesque, things like this were not as good. It touches your heart, but the other hand was also sad. She was over the 70s, And Alicia Alonso, the famous Cuban dancer, was nearly blind, She also continued too long. It has a touching side, but also a sad side. And there are some musicians, especially I used to live in Paris nearly 1 year. And the thing is that the moment you are in étoile, some people believe in what they remember. So pianists or dancers, they're not so good anymore, but they get this incredible applause, bravo, bravo, and clapping, standing, clapping, and then perhaps in the mind they think, I can still give so much to the public, and they continue too long, because not everybody has the strength to forget their ego. Not, if everybody tells you all the time you're a genius, it's very difficult to keep grounded with the foot of the ground.
It was the same with Toots. And also, let's face it, as an artist, you're addicted to applause.
Yeah.
That's
only
another...
There are exceptions. Then Glenn Gould, who was, of course, in the Soviet Union at the time, he was like a god. And then he stopped at about 30 years, He didn't want to perform in public. He hated that. He was only in studios, recording all the time, over and over and over.
Writing books and essays, which is great, because that's the heritage we have of his recordings.
I mean, there are other examples of incredible, one of the most incredible pianists of all time, Arturo Benedetti Michelangeli. This is for me one of the frustrations of my life. I never was able to invite him for a recital in the Concertgebouw. He never even performed in Holland. But this is another reason. He was acknowledged one of the greatest pianists of all time. I think, speaking of by the way, of the stupidness of competitions. I think he had at the Queen Elizabeth competition only the 6th prize. Just imagine.
I wanted to touch. Look, we're going
later on.
Yeah, but that's the interesting thing. I mean, I can either edit the podcast or we can keep talking.
Yeah.
I just love where this is going. As a jazz musician who loves classical music and grew up with classical music and even played it, but I'm totally rusty and I'm a bad classical musician.
No, but you're a great musician. Come on.
Well, thank you.
No. Come on.
Well, I mean, I've worked on my jazz on other.
But
stuff.
Jazz is art.
Yeah. Oh no, that's true.
It's the highest art.
Yeah.
So you have specialists in jazz, more in classical music, in pop, rock, whatever. But it's all the highest level. Come on.
It's hard work. Yeah.
To become at a certain level, everybody has to work so hard.
Yeah.
Nothing comes by itself. Look at Heifetz and the way he was. Jascha Heifetz, his violinist, the way I saw a documentary on him, every single moment doing his skills, Well,
also, for instance, in any musical field, like Paco de Lucia.
Oh boy, he was a genius. Also.
Yeah. And he said in an interview, the journalist asked him, Pablo, where did you get your inspiration? And then he said, it's 98% work and 2% inspiration.
It's so true.
Yeah.
It's so true. People who are not really involved, what's the background of musicians? They adore, they have this adoration for everybody. Most of you come on stage, but they should know it's not that easy. I know some people manage who said, "Oh, I would love to be an artist," but it's such hard work, discipline, and to have also the toughness to be able to go on stage.
Yeah, well, that's especially with. Look, I'm a jazz musician. If I have a concert or gig, we call it, and like 5 minutes before the gig starts, I want to change the program. I go like, well, I don't feel like playing this because maybe I don't like the piano or
exactly,
something, whatever reason. But like all these pianists you've booked, the audience requires a program. They expect a program. Yeah. So as a pianist, you have to stick to that, even if you don't feel like playing it. Of course, I guess because
there are some exceptions. There are some exceptions. Yeah.
They changed it the last. Yeah.
Yeah. And some of them will not give that program until the end.
Okay. I wanted to. Okay. Yeah.
Because of like Volodos, also Arcadi Volodos, one of the greatest.
He's my hero.
And I kind of, discover is not the right way, but I kind of made his career from the beginning. He said, but. How can I know now what I want to play in 1 year?
Exactly.
Perhaps I have another inspiration then. It's so true,
Thank you for listening. If you enjoy my podcast, then please subscribe, leave a rating and a review. Please visit my website, mikedelferro.com, where you also will find links to my other podcasts, Self-Management for Musicians. You will also find links to my music and my socials. And of course, please share this podcast with anyone interested. Nothing beats the word of mouth. Thank you. That's what I mean. Yeah, that's how I function. I mean,
But many pianists, some pianists play one program for a whole season and they will never change one single note of it. But some of them change every half a year, like Grigory Sokolov, a good friend of mine. Every half year he changes half of the program. But in the time, people like Sviatoslav Richter, Rubinstein, you cannot imagine the amount of programs they were bringing for one season. But nowadays, people expect so much perfection because of this whole area of CDs and all perfection.
And competitions.
Competitions, which is, I don't think art is not going in the right direction in this kind of way, I think.
That's what I wanted to ask you because,
I
mean, we're going all
that's
place, but no, I love it, it's cool. But me personally, I really dislike piano competitions. I see, like, there was this classical magazine here in the Netherlands called Piano World.
I know.
Wereld,
Yeah, I
thing.
know.
Like a very glossy.
Yeah, I know it.
And then I see like 10 million pianists who you don't know, and this one won that prize there.
Yeah.
And I think like, where's this going? All these, the competition, the level. How do you see this?
The overall level, of course, of piano playing, violin playing has increased a lot. The overall level, not at the top, because you cannot say pianists now play better than Horowitz or Rachmaninoff, or violinists play better than Milstein, and this is bullshit, and Heifetz,
yeah.
bullshit. But the overall, but it's becoming so difficult for young pianists to make a career, because so many can play kind of anything. So, in one sense, I can imagine they try the competitions. If they win first prize, second prize, sometimes part of the first prize is performing. They get contracts to performing in different places, in different countries, with different orchestras. Even if they are amazingly gifted, Deutsche Grammophon, for instance, will give them a contract, which will enable in the beginning to help them for the career. It's never a guarantee for a 10 or 20 year long career, of course, because it's not always the first prize who is the most interesting person, But
that's the famous story with Pogorelic, right?
He never went into the finals of the, I was friends with him. He never became in the finals of the Chopin competition. And Martha Argerich left the jury. She said, this man is a genius. And because we know what happens sometimes, especially nowadays, in the first round of many of these competitions, the jury is not immediately at its strength. For instance, at the Queen Elizabeth competition, the top soloists only come there for the finals or the half finals. So very often they don't even hear the first round. And in the first round, very often you have the real characters, the real personalities, who perhaps don't play exactly on a certain style which are expected by the pedagogues.
Yeah.
So then sometimes they are blocked, which is a shame, because you cannot say that Horowitz doesn't play like everyone else, but you cannot deny the way he's playing.
Of course.
But
from a basic principle,
yeah.
I already think that if you're talking about music,
yeah,
the whole thing that competitions exist, I think it's somehow insane.
Kissy never did a competition. Volodos never did a competition.
Good.
Frank Peter Zimmermann also, the violinist, and they still are where they are, because of that. This, of course, extraordinary talents. The only thing I must say, sometimes I discovered a musician through a competition. I used to work during years for Nikolai Znaider, this amazing violinist who won the first prize at the Reine Elisabeth competition. I didn't even was there at the finals, but I was for a gala concert. I went to Brussels, and I was very impressed by him as a musician, and he had something to say. The same was of this young German pianist who should have a much bigger career as now. He didn't even have a very good contract with the company, Severin von Eckartstein. He's a marvelous pianist and a marvelous musician with a huge repertoire. But he's himself. He doesn't show off on stage. He's honest as a musician, an incredible pianist. Why doesn't he make, not everybody has the kind of charisma as a Lang Lang or as a Yu Jiawang. Nothing bad about them.
He plays the music but doesn't play the game.
Some people know very well how to play the game because they have also immediately very strong manager. Many of the managers nowadays, my former colleagues, they want an easy life. So they want to represent musicians which give them very easy a lot of commission. So they don't need to fight and to invest too much time in them. Of course, if you win the Chopin competition or the Queen Elizabeth competition or the Tchaikovsky competitions, part of the prize is many concerts are offered. So you don't need to do anything as a manager. And if the if the young musicians are doing a good job, they will be reinvited. It's easy to work, you know.
Yeah.
But I was never looking for the easy way. I always try to follow my instinct and my passion, because otherwise some incredibly gifted musicians will never have the chance to perform.
Yeah, who maybe don't have a big mouth or
the managers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Of
very
course,
interesting though.
What is very important also, if you have the right conductors behind you. This is even the most important. At the time, many musicians were. Lorin Maazel was helping so many incredible young talents, like, for instance, Frank-Peter Zimmermann. Of course, Anne-Sophie Mutter and so was incredibly helped by Herbert von Karajan, to give you some examples. Gergiev, he helped so many young pianists or violinists. I must say, you can say what you want, but I always liked Valery a lot, but he helped so many musicians in their career.
Yeah.
And giving the possibility to play, and not everywhere in the world, you know.
That's beautiful.
And this is, but to make a career nowadays, it's so tough. The level is so high. If you are very, very gifted as a violinist, of course at the top, it's as hard as for every other instrument. Well, no, it's much more harder for a flutist or for a oboe player to make a world career as a soloist, you know.
Yeah.
There are only a few of them. But a violinist, you can anyhow get a contract for all these orchestras in the world. But as a pianist, so you become a teacher.
Yeah, and the market is totally saturated nowadays. Same in jazz, it's the same thing. You know, one after the other.
The level
graduates.
It's also
awesome,
it's mind breaking.
Yeah.
But of course, you see, I read stories about China, about the millions and the millions of young people who would like to become a professional pianist. Of course, all inspired by Lang Lang and Yun Di Li in the time, all inspired by them. But they don't realize, you know, that the world will be open to only to a few of them. Of course, they always incredibly, you know, the parents in these countries.
That's their hope. Their hope is that the child is going to be famous.
And they go very far. They are making slaves out of their children sometimes.
Yeah, what is the name of that documentary? Have you seen it about this?
Yeah.
The Chinese with stuff.
I don't know, but anyhow, they will even hit them and punish them, and it's horrible. Anyhow,
it's
you know. But how many of them will? Because nowadays we are so spoiled with technique, piano, violin, all these instruments. But you know, I am still hoping for more. I remember I went to so many concerts in my life, so many thousands of them. And remember, I can tell you one thing. On the spot, of course, you're impressed by pianists with an unbelievable technique. Wow, you will shout even at the end, no?
Yeah.
But the concerts which stay in my heart are only the one which gave me tears in my eyes because of the poetry, or the colors of the musical intelligence, people that have a message to say, to tell.
Yeah.
That's all about. It's the same about dances. You can give you 8 pirouettes or whatever things, you know. It's amazing. But then the ones that a beautiful adagio, a beautiful arabesque, or the musicality, that is what touches your heart, you know. These are the moments who stay in your heart. Of course, you must be sensitive for this. Not everybody. I'm very sensitive to this kind of message I receive for the musicians.
I remember that in one of the last concerts I saw when you were still booking at the Concertgebouw was Gavriliuk, Alexander Gavriliuk.
Became a very good friend of mine.
Yeah, and then he's totally amazing. And then he played all the Prokofiev sonatas. I mean,
unbelievable, mind-breaking.
But then as an encore, he did the Träumerei from Schumann.
Exactly.
And that's what I remember.
That you see.
I remember the technique and how impressive it was. Same with Trifonov. You know, I mean, the Prokofiev sonatas.
They're amazing, mind-breaking. But I must say, of course, but the Prokofiev sonata, I must say, the sonata number 7, this slow movement can also touch your heart.
Oh yeah.
Because there's the sonata 6, 7, and 8 are the war sonatas, you know, and it's something very moving about it. And of course, the Precipitato is just the war, you know. But I agree with you. The simplicity of the Träumerei, of Kinderscenen, of the
Schumann. Yeah.
Schumann, how you say in English, the Kinderscenen, the scenes of a child,
I think so. Yeah.
something like this. This was one of these pieces that Horowitz could make you cry.
Yeah.
Because he played all these Hungarian rhapsodies, these unbelievable virtuosity things, and then you have the simplicity, and this is the most difficult to play this. Because it's even to give too much sentimentality, you know?
Yeah.
But to play it with the right feeling and the touch, you know. One of my great friends, and I think there is not one pianist who touched my heart so much and who taught me so much about what is all about music and poetry, is Radulescu. I was close to him. I've heard him in 90s.
Is he still alive?
No, he died. No.
He was from Romania.
Romania. And he was married, and he was living in Lausanne.
Where you were born.
Where I was born. And I used to stay at his place in London when he was there with his first wife, which was she was a wonderful cellist. She studied with Rostropovich, and he taught me my love, my passion for Schubert. I heard him play in 1971 twice in Rotterdam. By the way, in Rotterdam for the first time. Once first piano concerto of Brahms with Edo de Waard and Rotterdam Philharmonic, which was something out of this world. But then his recital in the big hall of the Doele with the Out of Doors of Bartók, Opus 110 of Beethoven, but then the G major Fantasy Sonata of Schubert. From that moment on, it changed my whole way of thinking about music. I could hear sounds I didn't thought they were possible on a piano. A kind of legato, which is of course not possible. But this kind of poetry, and the whole world of Schubert, for me, Schubert became one of my great, great favorite composers. He was 31 when he died.
Yeah.
And he says all the human elements are there. The sorrow, fear, beauty, despair, all is there. And sometimes also you feel always in Schubert, even when you are the most sadness, but always somewhere there's a little light coming from a little sunlight.
Shines through the...
It's like the Austrian, nature. His music has this Viennese, this Ländler, this folk songs coming out, and this music can make me cry. It's so. I remember the first time I heard in the big hall of the Concertgebouw in the 70s. I used to organize for my first boss, Mr. Salma, a Schubert cycle. The 4 recitals of Schubert with Alfred Brendel, with all the late works, Moments musicaux, Wanderer Fantasie, all the late sonatas, etc. Radulescu performed them with the Amadeus Quartet. And the Trout, but there was also this most amazing piece, the String Quintet, with 2 cellos of Schubert, with the Amadeus Quartet and William Pleeth. The slow movement, it's one of the most strong, amazing pieces ever written. It touched me so much, I was crying during this whole small movement. It was the whole world was in front of you. All the human feelings were there in 15 minutes. I don't know by heart how long it takes. But a man who died at 31 years, how is it possible? Schubert, the Winterreise, this Liedersync cycle, the 3 late piano sonatas. How can a man of 31 years composes music who's...
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
You know, he was not the greatest of pianists. He was an ugly man. He was not a happy man. He died from syphilis, you know. And then giving us this kind of beauty which, you know, when I think of it, I can have tears in my eyes, you know.
It's mind-blowing. And also, you're saying this about Radu Lupu. I remember Volodos, Arcadi Volodos.
Oh, he was amazing Schubert playing.
Yeah.
Amazing also.
And because I always thought with Schubert like was kind of repetitive, you know. And then when I heard him playing it, every time when he repeated, he added another layer onto the music.
That's the secret of Schubert.
Then I realized, oh my God,
that's the secret of his big sonatas. Yeah. They can sound even boring because, of course, Brendel, the debut of Brendel, was in October 1972 in the big hall, and I had to organize this for my boss, of course. He played as one of the few pianists at the time the last 3 Schubert sonatas. They're very long. And then the last movements are very often many repeats. But then the secret is, you have this unendliche Melodien, the famous Schubert melodies, and you say, every time the melody came back, the secret is to make it with this small ritardando that you say, oh, there it comes again, instead of saying, oh my God, there it is again. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
And this is with the smallest of nuances, with the breathing, it makes you...
It requires a real master.
Only the great masters can achieve this.
Yeah, Radu Lupu could do that, and Volodos does it, yeah.
And Brendel also did it, you know. And
he stopped playing, eh?
Yes, but not because, many people think because he was scared, he didn't play, because the last recital of Brendel, it was like a circle. His last recital in Amsterdam, it finished after the interval with the B-flat major sonata 960, the last one of Schubert. He started his concert, first recital, with the ending in 960, and he finished. But his playing was still unbelievably beautiful. It was even perhaps a bit more romantic. You know, when you got older, you got milder also in many things.
Yeah.
He couldn't hear very well from one of his ears. And that's why he stopped.
Yeah, with a hearing problem then.
And now, of course, it's even worse. He's 92 now. And, you know, I still phone him. I used also, my dear Maurizio, I used to phone them every year because they have their birthday. Also, I'm going from one part to the other, but...
No, it's great. It's so...
I will tell you...
So fascinating what
I will tell you,
sharing.
3 of the great pianists of all time were born on the same day, on the 5th of January, only with 11 years difference. The first one was Arturo Benedetti Michelangeli. Exactly 11 years later, Alfred Brendel was born. And exactly 11 years later, on the 5th of January, Maurizio Pollini was born. Can you imagine?
That's amazing.
All 3 Capricorns. I always say, because I'm on the 31st of December.
Yeah. And
one of my big gods, and this time on violin playing, because my first instrument was always the violin before I discovered the piano. Nathan Milstein was also born on the 31st of December. So it was for me, every year, I phoned Maurizio and Alfred on their birthday. It was like a tradition. Say, why? You know, but, you know, and they appreciated this. Because these people who are so incredible, you can also feel very lonely.
Yes.
I don't need to tell you.
Yeah, I've seen that with Toots as well, to be honest.
You know, when you have been such big, incredible, famous in the whole world, and then things happen, must be horrible. You are used to have been treated as nearly gods.
The attention, yeah.
And then you don't exist anymore. This must be horrible.
Yeah.
So, you know, and I know they always... Last time I phoned Maurizio, and I feel so guilty because he was not feeling very well in January. So I couldn't reach him.
You're talking about Pollini.
Yeah, who died, you know.
Yeah, recently.
And every time he said, Marco, come and visit me once in Milano. But I can't anymore. I couldn't anymore. But Alfred was so happy. Every time. And, you know, it's a kind of question of empathy. Just think of the tragic way Maria Callas died. She was beginning 50s. This woman, she was adored by the whole world. Then she became one of the most tragic, most sad human beings on earth because of what happened with this Onassis.
Yeah,
he left her for Jackie Kennedy. She wanted a child. She never received a child. She never got to marry him, you know. She gave everything for him. And at the end of her life, she was there living in an apartment in Paris. And at the end, they became kind of friends again because it broke with Jackie Kennedy. But this was she even lost so much weight for him, you know.
Yeah.
But the story is because
she tried to make a comeback after that, and that was horrible. Painful. Yeah.
And people, of course, are very cruel. Then critics are very cruel.
Yeah.
But you know, her general manager was Michel Glotz, was a very famous Paris, very famous manager. And he was also the general manager of Karajan. He wrote incredible memoirs. And once I was at his office, and he told me about, he was one of the few people still in contact with Maria Callas, you know. And these stories, I had really tears in my eyes. So you must have, never forget if people, what they brought you. And don't think, oh, they're not interested. This is the only thing they have in life sometimes. Small things. Phone them if you have the phone number. Give them some respect and tell them. A couple of months ago, I was looking Mezzo TV and hearing an unbelievable performance of the complete Année Pèlerinage of Liszt, Switzerland and Italy, recorded, I think, end of the 70s, beginning of the 80s by Alfred Brendel. Many people forget what an unbelievable pianist. He was also pianistically. He was, of course, Mozart, Haydn, Beethoven, Brahms, Schubert. When he was younger, he played everything. I was looking at this, it was recorded live, without an audience, in England. I was watching, you know, every of these pieces. He's such an intellectual man. You know, he knows everything about literature, about painting, about everything, about architecture. He gave me so much beauty and energy, I immediately phoned him. And then his reaction, you know, he said, Marco, you cannot imagine what this means for me.
Yeah.
You made my day. And then I said, now, I'm sure nobody phones him about this. But they are small things, but these musicians and many actors who are there becoming alcoholists because they have nothing to do anymore. Rita Hayworth, all these people, you know, don't blame them.
Oh, no, you should never be judgmental.
It's society who makes them like this very often. Giving them, you know, they become such huge stars. Of course they become lonely, and sometimes they become even so-called arrogant because they have to protect themselves.
And always the expectance of the audience also is a tough one.
You know, everybody, now my specialty is, of course, classical music, but I think I have this empathy I can feel for all kind of artists. You go there, you have to open your heart in front of a huge audience who expect so many things from them.
Yeah.
It's not easy. Sometimes you have a lot of problems yourself. Sometimes you have somebody left you are not feeling well, you have financial, whatever kind of problems. And people don't give a damn about this. This is show business, you know, it's tough.
The show must go on.
Exactly. And I don't care if it's classical musicians, art, everybody expects so much. And you have to give yourself to them.
All the time.
And this, you know, I have so much respect for all kind of artists, you know, and I never will condemn, never. Go on stage first.
Yeah, and then see, yeah. Well, it was the same with Toots. You know, he had to stop playing when he was 92. and he passed away when he was 94, and he was sitting at home for 2 years, and he was so lonely. But fortunately, what happened is that occasionally, the musicians he played with, they didn't forget him, so they went to his house and they played a little bit. He had a beautiful piano, and he was so incredibly happy when someone came to his house.
Of course.
And that gave him some peace in the last years of his life. But it was so tragic to see the contrast between, having to push away people. He had a great manager who always protected him very well against people, journalists. You know how it works. But then the contrast of being at home and like being so happy that someone gives you a phone call.
People very often. Well, of course, I was so lucky. I had their numbers.
Yeah. You have an interesting address book. But these little things, and they can touch your heart. For instance, on the other way around, when I had my 25th anniversary of the Meesterpianisten in the Concertgebouw, of course, I invited many people who couldn't come there. I knew this in beforehand, but I admired so much Maris Janssons and his wife Irina. Maris was such a human being, an incredible conductor, And I received at my office such a beautiful bouquet of flowers, with handwriting, thanking me for everything I did, for music. These little things, but it's the other way around. And I felt suddenly so touched. He didn't need to do that, No, but that's also the reason, I'm here. I always feel this incredible, unconditional love for music and artists you have. Of course, it's business, of course, but you have this very genuine feeling for people and
a lot of respect also.
Yeah. But let's rewind a little bit because we were going all over.
I know, that's always with me.
Yeah, but I'm
sorry about that.
No worries. But how did it start with the series? How did it start?
I will tell you. I had all my experience during between 72 and 78 with Mr. Samama, which was he was managing a very big artist management company in Laren, which was close where I was living in the time. His son Leo Samama was a very good flute player, and we went at the same school, and he was the only young man at the time, or kid, we were kind of children, who spoke French, because I didn't speak any Dutch when I came here. And I didn't know what his father was exactly doing. I know that very often they invited me to go to concerts, and to listen to music. He had an unbelievable, how you say, not bibliothèque, but
library
of
collection
of recordings you cannot imagine. And but I never even imagined what kind of work he was doing. My first job after leaving, after the death of my father, because my father died at when he was 52 from a car accident.
Oh.
And it was half a year before I finished my high school. I was the eldest home. My mother, poor mother, was 48. Spanish woman in Holland. It was tough. I didn't know what to do with my future. I didn't know. Was I going to... Anyhow.
You were lost.
So I got a job in Heemstede for a recording company, EMI. It was called Bofema EMI. But I hoped to have contact with music life, but it was nothing. I was just completely boring, financial kind of nothing. So I was once having dinner at this Mr. Samama in Laren, and he asked me, because he was always very helpful, and asking me, how are you, my son? He always called me mijn jongen, my boy.
My boy, yeah.
Because he knew, of course, my parents, and he knew about the difficulties I went through. And one day I was having dinner there, and at the end of the dinner he started talking about his work, and he said, are you happy with your work? I said, no, I was living in an incredible house, friends of my parents, beautiful garden, even with a tennis court, because I was fanatic on tennis playing. And I said, no, I'm not happy. Then he says, I have a, how do you call it in English, a vacature?
There is a
vacature, no.
Job offer.
I can offer you
vacancy.
A job. A vacancy. if you want, within 2 months you can start. And I looked at him, I was in a kind of a shock. I said, but Mr. Salma, I have no experience. The only thing I can bring to you is my knowledge of languages, because I speak like 6 languages, and my passion for music. I said, don't worry, my boy, you will learn. So 2 months later I started there. But he had something in his mind which I didn't know. Very smart. He told me, the first year, I only want you to take on the phone. So as a kind telephonist, I want you to know exactly who is who in the international music world. Not only in Holland, because he was dealing with the whole world, but also read the correspondence. Just see how I had no idea. I was going to concerts, but what's happening before the concert is there, you know. Yeah. Reading the whole correspondence, more than a year. And after 1 year says, and now I will tell you, I have some ideas. I want to organize concerts in the Concertgebouw at my expenses. Because there was hardly any concert in the Concertgebouw in the big hall. You cannot imagine it now. It was one of the most used halls in the whole world. In the big hall, they had only one series, het Romantisch Concert, the romantic concert, with all the Dutch orchestras inviting one pianist to play a romantic concert. In the small hall, they had only 3 series. And of course, you had the series of the Royal Concertgebouw Orchestra and the Zaterdag Matinee, etc., etc. And so he decided he would organize his International Piano Series, he called it. That was the first season. And he got the Sunday evenings and the Sunday mornings at the same time for the rehearsals. But he could choose within all the Sundays of the whole season. Can you imagine?
Wow. Yeah.
The first season, and of course I remember as the day of yesterday, it was my first acquaintance with these musicians.
And which year was this?
1972-73, the season 92-73.
Okay.
And it started on the 12th of October 72, I'm not wrong.
Yeah. Again, you're incredible.
I'm not wrong. Perhaps I missed one day, but I'm not sure. With Alfred Brendel playing the 3 last Schubert sonatas. I spoke to this before. Second recital was the debut of Maurizio Pollini. And what had happened a couple of months before this debut, Pollini had given a recital in Milano, and he was very close to Abbado, Berio, and Nono. They were very, kind of left, politically very to the left, and they had read a official proclamation against the renewed bombardments, how you call it? Bombings
yeah.
Of the Americans in Vietnam, using this napalm, it was horrible things. So they had a protest against this. And Pollini read this document before his recital in Milano. People starting booing. They didn't accept it. It was very conservative. They didn't accept having politics. And Pollini was in a shock. And this reached the Volkskrant, Hans Heg, which was at the time
which is a very established.
He was the
Dutch,
head of the music, of the classical music department of the. He interviewed. He really wrote about this whole happening in. So already he was not unknown, Pollini, but still, Brendel had 600 people in the big hall. Pollini 1,100. Nobody was used to hear this pianist in the big hall. Third recital was by Radu Lupu, playing also the G major sonata, by the way. And the fourth by a young French-Mexican pianist who got third prize at the Chopin competition in 1960 when Pollini won the first prize, Michel Bloch. Wonderful, very sensitive pianist who played, for instance, incredibly well Spanish music and the French music. That was the first season. Then Samama, who was married to a very wealthy woman from the Jewish Polak Schwarz family, and he continued the next season, and there were, among others, the renewals of Brendel, Pollini, Lupu, but also the debuts of, among others, Nelson Frère and Martha Argerich.
Wow.
I will tell you, the debut of Martha Argerich, she was playing alone at the time, I never forget in my whole life. She played before the interval the famous Toccata and Fuga of Bach, ta-da-dam, ta-da-da-da-da-dam, yeah. Then she played the Liszt Sonata, B minor. You cannot imagine what was happening there. You know, her octaves already was out of this world. And after the interval, she played the 24 Preludes of Chopin. And at that time, I was nervous meeting these incredible musicians. You know, I was so young. I hardly ever even dared to talk. And then, that was very nice of Mr. Sama. After every of these concerts, there was a dinner, like I used to do, and he always invited me. So I was listening to all these conversations by these incredibly cultivated people. In the beginning, I didn't dare to even say one word, but I remembered what they were saying. Now I'm speaking too much, but in the time, I was very shy, and I learned so much. But after this, Samamas decided to do many other things. He said, I'm going to do now a big orchestral series. So it was the first time major European and American orchestras and Russian orchestra performed in the big hall. You know what was the debut? Chicago Symphony with Schulte, Boston Symphony with Ozawa, and Kondrashin with his own Russian orchestra in the big hall of the Concertgebouw, which it gave me such an opportunity to discover the world of music, to meet so many people. And then he liked big things. He started to organize a piano series in the small hall, a violin series in the small hall, a cello series in the small hall, a vocal series in the small hall and in the big hall, a guitar and series in the big hall with two guitarists in the small hall, guitar series in the small hall with two guitarists in the big hall, well, Narciso Yepes and Julian Bream, which used to play the first half the lute and the second half the guitar without amplification in the big hall. Sold out in the time, Julian Bream. Yeah. Also a lute series in the small hall. The first one to organize before the Concertgebouw did authentic music in the small hall with, you know, all these people.
Medieval or?
No. Yeah, old music.
Yeah, old
authentic music.
Yeah.
And then he was doing his festival with Alberto Lisi. The May Festival was in the big hall and in the small hall. Alberto Lisi, but who was the patron, who was playing all the time, the teacher of Alberto Lisi, Yehudi Menuhin. and the sister of Yehudi Menuhin, Hepzibah Menuhin, and the Camerata Lisi. So I grew up with all these people around me, which was amazing. Samama at the time, when I started with him, was managing, among others, Yehudi Menuhin in Holland, Pierre Boulez, Domingo, you know, all these incredible people, Ivry Gietlis, Herman Krebbers was of course the famous Dutch violinist. So not only that I met them as when I was organizing this concert, but also as manager, you know. That's the way and that's why I learned everything.
What a great man.
He was a great man. He died much too young, among others from diabetes also. I have also diabetes, but he had diabetes number 1 and me number 2. He was too heavy and other complications. I will tell you before I go on, how I started one little anecdote about Montserrat Caballé.
Oh yeah, the Spanish.
She was, of course, the legendary soprano with one of the most beautiful voices ever. It was really bel canto singing. You cannot imagine more beautiful. She had this soaring voice, this incredible pianissimo. And she was having her debut in the big hall. It was in 1971, if I'm not wrong. I had started with this office in 1970. And she was invited to sing in it called Matinee op de Vrije Zaterdag, it was called. Now it's called the
the Saturday, there was like Saturday morning
Yeah.
concerts.
Not afternoon concerts.
Sorry, yeah.
And she was doing a program of the unknown aria, arias of the unknown Verdi and Donizetti. And she was Spanish, Catalan. My mother was also Spanish, born in Catalonia. So my boss told me, come together with me to the airport to fetch Cavalier. You can imagine how nervous I was. She was already a big diva, big in every sense. She was not tall, but she was, I cannot tell you how big, no? And she was 7.5 months pregnant. It was her last performance before her pregnancy. So you can imagine what came out there of the airport.
That's must be very impressive.
It was awesome, you know.
Yeah.
So I was looking at this, and my Mr. Sama introduced me to her, saying, "This is my new kind of assistant, or kind of both, you know. He's half Spanish, Catalan." And when she looks at me, she starts speaking in Spanish to me, saying, "Pero mira, tuve una operación encima de mi rodilla de derecha. I just had an operation on top of my right knee." And you know what she did then? She had skirts, you know, huge. She lifted her skirt on top of her knee to show me the scar. "Pero mira la cicatriz. Look at the scar," which was on top of her knee, just in the middle of the tights, you know. I was in a shock, because I didn't see any scar. I saw a mass of flesh with the scars and the knees and the legs. Nothing you know how you can, one piece of flesh. At the time I could blush, I got completely red. Yeah. I said, "Ay, qué horror, señora, how horrible, Mrs. Qué horror, señora." I didn't know what to say, and I was in a shock. I had never sewn this kind of legs, tights and knees before. I never discovered the whole scar. I believe you. Believe me, I never saw the scar. So I went home in a shock still. I immediately phoned my mother. I saw the tights of Cavalier and of my friends, you know. But she said it in such a natural way, in a kind of a sense of humor, because she had a lot of humor. That was one of my first experiences.
But did she also act like a diva?
Perhaps with... I think she was less a diva than perhaps Callas could be, you know. Yeah. But I'm sure she could be a diva. But once she told me also, when she was much more famous, she was also not only, her Aida was incredible, because at a certain moment you have this top note, pianissimo, you know, and she could not, but she could have these legato lines for seconds, and she could continue, you know. And this high note in the pianissimo was, you could not believe. Radu Lupu heard her sing Aida in London. He told me, "You cannot imagine, Marco." But then I asked her once, "Are you going to sing Norma again?" Because she was also beautiful in Norma. And you know, in the beginning she didn't want to sing Norma. And you know who told her that she should sing Norma with her voice? Maria Callas. That's beautiful, isn't it? Wow. She told me that. But then she told me about the opera. That's why sometimes I don't like opera, because the how you call the régisseurs, how you call it, the director? Yeah, but you call the metteur en scène, the people that decide I never have this word in English. The régisseur, the metteur en scène, you say in French. Yeah.
I know what you mean.
Before you had this incredible, like Visconti, you know, and this. Yeah. But nowadays, and then she told me, I was invited, but they asked me to sing on roller skates. So I said no, just to give you an idea what some of the singers must go on through. You heard the stories of Fidelio now at the Dutch Opera.
No? What happened?
It's one of the greatest scandal ever. It was so horrible, the whole setting of Fidelio, that it, you know, I think you have to have, you can do a modern setting, but you have to have respect also.
Yeah.
And Chéreau had these incredible things with Boulez and Wagner, you know, and Bayreuth. It was legendary. Also, the Wagner and the Monteverdi with the Pierre Audi, Also, but this was done with so much. This was modern, but so much good taste. You know what I mean? But anyhow, don't speak about that. But then I left the company of Mr. Sauer in 1978, and I went first with a friend to make a big trip through Mexico. And afterwards, I was offered a job at another management company in Amsterdam, Nederlands Impresariaat, and they asked me to organize a piano series for them, which I did with many of the pianists which were not working for someone like Pires, Pogorelic, Joāo, Ashkenazi, Christian Zimmermann, not the worst pianist.
No, not really. Oh, the microphone. Let me fix this.
I'll stand up. Sorry.
Yeah, mine.
Microphone. Speak much too long.
Ja, that's fine. Yeah.
Is it okay?
I can edit this. Ik haal het er al even uit.
So I was saying that I left for Mexico, and then I was engaged by this Nederlands Impresariaat to organize this piano series for them, de serie Grote Pianisten. Funny enough, it's my name, the serie Grote Pianisten. I put on this name, and that's the name now used by the Concertgebouw for their piano. Well, it's not a big deal, Grote Pianisten, it's not a big deal, but anyhow.
You invented the name.
Yeah, but anyhow. And then, but after a couple of years, I didn't feel comfortable. So I was asked to move to Paris to join one of my colleagues there, not organizing concerts, but only managing musicians. And it was, the office was in the Salle Pleyel, which in the time was the home concert hall of the Orchestre de Paris. And that the acoustic was not very beautiful there, but anyhow, I grew to know the French way of working. And I'm fluent in French. My French is better than my English. But anyhow, after 9 years, it's a bit typical French. I love France and nothing wrong about that, but I never received my contract after 9 years. So I said, let's go back. That's when I came back in Holland in 1985. And then I decided I'm going to open my own agency and start my own piano series. Because what happened meanwhile, there were like 5 different piano series in the big hall of the Concertgebouw, all organized by managers, but none of them wanted to collaborate. So they were only inviting for the series the pianists they were also representing. But they didn't have enough famous pianists to have a very interesting piano series of their own. So perhaps the one had Pollini, Brendel, Lupu, but the other ones were not at the same level. Many of the other ones had, what I told you, Pogorelic, Ashkenazi and Pires, but the other ones were not interesting. So what happened at a certain moment, the public didn't buy anymore the subscriptions. They were concentrating on the loose of the different pianists of all these different
the highlights, so-called highlights.
Yeah. Without, in a complete natural way, they all disappeared, the piano series. So when I started with my first Meesterpianisten in 87, 88, I decided I'm going to do something completely different. I just started, so I didn't have all these pianists who I could represent. I had hardly any pianist. The first who followed me was Ivo Pogorelic. He took all the risks.
So you really didn't have your own artist roster?
Yes, I started, but I just started.
Yeah.
So it was not important enough in the beginning that I could invite many pianists. Later on, I started working for Brendel, for Lupu, many of these pianists, but not in the beginning. So I said, the only way to be successful is joining forces. So I will book all the pianists I'm interested in or I respect through my colleagues. They were all shocked because that never happened before, Said, I'm not going to steal your pianists, I just want to book them. They couldn't offer a recital, and I was prepared to take the risk. So that's why I got my first series. And from that day on, I continued with the same policy during 33.5 years.
From 87 until
19,
Yeah.
2018, 19.
And was there ever a season where it didn't happen?
Sorry? No, 2019, 20. The half of 19. Because I will tell you, the lockdown started on the 12th of March 2020.
Yes.
And before that, I had already recitals that season. And I had, for instance, I remember so well by heart, on the 15th of March 2020, I had a sold-out hall with Sokolov, which I had to cancel.
Yeah.
And later on, that same month, on the 29th of March, because all my concerts were on the Sunday evenings, I had a sold-out Joāo. And then Volodos and Juganski and
everybody was
and
programmed.
Kissin was programmed, and the season afterwards they were also programmed, and so I lost everything. But of course, it was not the only reason. Because I never had I always had my own agency. I took all the private risks. So I had some sponsors, but in the end, I got the sponsors through my contacts. I saw that at a certain moment you have many contacts, you know many of the CEOs, but if they leave a company, the new CEOs want to have something of his own. So I lost many contacts with sponsors, not because they didn't like the quality, but they wanted to try something completely different.
Yeah.
And it's impossible, I will tell you, everybody knows this, the Concertgebouw themselves know this very well. It's impossible to book musicians with high fees if you have not kind of support. Without all these other orchestras, the Royal Concertgebouw Orchestra, Netherlands Philharmonic, the Dutch Opera, the Ballet, Zaterdag Matinee, all these other organizers, they all have a lot of subvention from the state. And I never had this,
So you were.
I was already
dependent on sponsoring.
Yes, I was already very worried, but then came the Corona, and that was the game, set, and match. It was over.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
But between 87 and let's say March 2020, has it been there every year?
Every season.
Every season.
Every season.
Every season. Bi-weekly, every 2 weeks on Sunday.
No, well, it depending on the availability of the hall. Because of course, in the beginning, I could choose when I was with my first boss. But now, I always had the Sunday evenings I could choose. But it was some pianists wanted in combination with the morning. Pollini wanted a guarantee that he could rehearse on the morning. Brendel the same thing. Ushida also, Sokolov also. And that was damn difficult because nowadays the Concertgebouw, many years ago, they have the Sunday morning concerts. So I had to fight for it. So they gave me a guarantee that I would have at least 4 Sunday mornings in the big hall in combination with the evenings.
Because these pianists only wanted to rehearse in the big hall. If you would provide them a great grand piano at a conservatory or practice.
No, they would. But the thing is, at a certain moment, they want to choose an instrument. And how would you choose an instrument in a other hall? So I made a deal either in the morning of the concert, or very often they agreed to choose an instrument after the Saturday evening concert, sometimes at 12 at night. So the 2 concerts, grand pianos were played on stage with the piano tuner, Michel Branches, and then the pianists, they came and choose an instrument.
After midnight, they arrived the day before.
Yeah. And sometimes they stayed, I don't know until how long, but of course, sometimes it happened that some of the pianists, because the piano stayed for many years there, after 7 years they had the new instrument coming, and they completely trusted Michel Branches, the tuner. Sometimes they came with their own instrument. Pollini came sometimes with his own instrument. Not very often, but Andras Schiff came in with his own instrument, Then you don't have this problem. Of course, I had to provide them always with the rehearsal facilities. It's normal.
Yeah, especially classical musicians are.
This is a problem. This is a dilemma of all the pianists. A singer has his own throat. Violinists and cellists come with their own instruments and flutists, etc. But the pianist
Well, you know, that's the same in my field. I mean, you know, the worst thing about being a pianist is that you never know what to expect. I mean, you know what to expect at some point when you're more experienced, when you know the hall, the venue, the club, whatever. But still, you know, there are a lot of unpleasant surprises.
But even so, you know, I had to fight very often because I was managing many of these musicians, and the organizers very often they say, "Oh, but we have a Steinway." I try to convince them, but that doesn't mean anything. If the Steinway is not well in a good shape, not well tuned or prepared, it can be a disaster for any pianist.
Oh yeah, Steinway doesn't. Yeah,
you know.
I have a funny story for you. When I started years ago, I played at a jazz club and I wanted to know about the piano. So I call on a landline and this lady answers the phone and I said, "Well, I'm going to play at your club. Huh? What kind of piano do you have?" So she says, "Just a second." So she puts down the phone. I hear the footsteps like, you know, going softer and back. And she picks up the phone and she says, "The piano is green." It's green. Yeah, she didn't even have no clue about the brand, or she said, "It's a green piano." Yeah, yeah.
But you know, that's
It's funny though.
Yeah, but it's frightening. That many of these organizers, some of them have no kind of managers, and have not empathy. They don't understand anything about the musicians going on stage.
No.
For the pianist, you know, very often some of the pianists even ask for Michel Branches. Volodos is always working or traveling nearly in the whole of Europe with Michel Branches, because they know exactly what to expect from themselves. You know.
Yeah, especially if you have to perform it at that incredible level. Yeah. So do you remember all the concerts you've booked? I think so. Your memory, I mean, again, it's amazing. So.
I remember many things. Of course, you know, I just was thinking, everything in my life that had the influence in my life, especially the good things, I remember the bad things, but I try sometimes to put them aside, only because now I'm not even allowed to work. That's my problem, you know. So sometimes you feel very alone here because you have so much energy and you cannot do anything with this energy, you know. Then sometimes I feel about bad things or people I trusted, I shouldn't have trusted. I'm not speaking about musicians now, by the way, but
no, you're talking about the business
things.
Yeah.
If I would have done this, but on the other hand, the past is the past. Try to concentrate in the future, and I went through many difficult problems, physically, mentally, also. But you know, still, I know so many people from the arts world who give me so much positive energy. I feel very lucky to have this, you know. Just imagine if I would have been in this situation without the passion I have for music or for ballet or for dance, would have been horrible.
Yeah.
I don't know what I would have done, and because if you have this love and passion, whatever happens, you will never be completely alone. It's true.
Well, there are always people I mean, I'm here because I know who I'm talking to, and your history and who you are, and and your knowledge. Well, you're just such an inspiring person.
I don't know.
You are.
But I met so many people and they inspired me so much, you know, really. And that's, if I can do something back, even now for young dancers or some pianists, because I'm not allowed to even receive money, you know, officially. But if I can help people, I do it because they deserve it, you know. They need this help.
Yeah. And do you blame COVID for this, that this all stopped in your situation?
COVID had a very big part on this all, definitely.
Yeah. Well, I mean, maybe there are a lot of details you don't want.
Not only work likes, but also for my whole. I blame it for many things. COVID. Yeah, many things happened.
Yeah,
in the whole world, it changed so many things in the whole world. You know,
it's the only thing which impacted really every person on the planet.
Yeah.
Fortunately, you too, and everybody.
And it's still, many people still have problems because of this COVID, you know, or lost so many things. It's Yeah, never, nobody would have ever thought this would have been possible in these modern times. Like this new virus of COVID.
Like a pandemic.
It's spread in the whole world, and it's changed, it changed many things.
Yeah. But Marco, in any case, I would like to thank you for this and for this interview. It has been so incredibly inspiring. And actually, what I would love to do is come back more often and record more.
Yeah.
Because all these stories you have about all these amazing artists, it's great for the audience to listen to.
I can tell so many. I forgot to mention one of my great favorites, which was Joāo Cherkassky. This amazing Ukraine-born pianist. Of course, he had a Russian nationality, who left there, and he played until such a high age. And someone I loved so much, and I respect so much also, and such a lonely person. And I can even write a book about Joāo, to tell you the truth. He was this kind of wizard. He was so small. His main teacher was Joseph Hofmann, one of the great pianists of the beginning of the 20th century. It was a real romantic era of piano playing, and he continued playing this way, but until a high age he was learning pieces like, he was over 70 and he started working on Prokofiev's second piano concerto.
In his 70s?
Yeah, and he was playing pieces by Boulez, by Ligeti, by everything, He had a huge repertoire, and he gave me, for every time he was coming in my piano series, he gave me the choice on 3 completely different programs. Completely different. And you know what I did very often? I said, he was called Joāo. Joāo, could you perhaps agree to play the first half of this program and the second half of the second program? Never a problem. And you know what touched me also? His last official concert was in my piano series. He played on physical conditions which were not human. He had already a liquid between his heart and his lungs, and he was 86. And he was coming from Geneva. I was sure he was going to cancel. He didn't cancel. He was living in London in a hotel room. He told Marco, his incredible accent he had, Marco, I think even a pianist twice as young as me would have cancelled, but I couldn't cancel or my public. And you know what the program he played? Because he never changed it. He knew this program already 2 years. We had decided 2 years before, and he was completely healthy when he gave me this program. Second half he was, among others, playing the sonata with the funeral march of Chopin. And he died not even 2 months after this concert in hospital in London, Can you imagine this? It was so touching.
Wow.
And and he told me one of the most beautiful things also. He was already in his 80s. I can tell you stories that will make you cry with laughing also, because there's this kind of humor. But he told me something so beautiful. Over 80s, he prepared for every concert the same way. Every concert, wherever it was. And then he says, once he told me, Marco, every concert is like a premiere for me. For a musician over his 80s, it's such a beautiful thing to say. It means there was never routine.
Yeah.
It's beautiful, no?
That's amazing.
Every concert in a small or a big hall. And this is an example for many pianists who sometimes prepare, if they are in London and New York, they want to be on their best. Every concert was as important for him, I think it was amazing. Joāo Cherkassky.
What would be your advice to young artists and especially pianists? With your wisdom you've gained all over the years working with a zillion of world-class pianists.
First of all, you need to have the talent. We all know this.
No.
We go for granted that they have the talent. And then they must work so much so hard. I would tell them one thing: don't always, don't want to make a too fast career. Some want to give too many concerts with too much repertoire. Have the courage to say no sometimes, because if you really have this talent, you will be invited. But suddenly say, oh, but I have an invitation from the Berlin Philharmonic, so come on. If it's not the right repertoire for you, wait some years. Don't go to Vienna for your debut with the Mozart piano concerto, Only if you feel you're 100% prepared, take your time. Also try to find a manager who believes in you and not who wants to exploit you. There are so many careers have been broken about that. Of course, there are managers who have all the power in the world, but if you have this incredible talent, the conductors will invite you because it spreads around. Take your time.
That's such a great advice,
because it's honest towards the music you are playing also.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it's easy to say for me,
Well, it's such a great advice because it's hard to say no.
It's so hard to say
at any age.
Yeah.
If I have to turn down a concert, I still feel bad about it. I don't know what it is. That's the thing. But if you're that young and you're eager and especially now,
you will have more respect.
Competitive times.
At the end, you will have more respect.
Yeah.
But it's easy to say because I know some incredibly gifted musicians that were distracted by giving too many concerts too fast. There's no musician in the world that can play everything as good. It doesn't exist.
No.
With all the talent in the world.
No. But the fear, of course, is, especially now with the saturated market.
They don't want to miss anything.
Yeah, and you say, well, then I'm going to call someone else who might be better than me, and then, that's the thing. So it's so incredibly hard to say no, for many reasons.
But if you're not well prepared, and for instance, as a manager, I had so many managers presenting themselves, trying to sell me, let's put this dirty way, to sell me their pianist for my piano series. And very often also, musicians trying to convince me to work for them, to manage them as musicians. And something I learned from Mr. Sama, and sometimes you get a biography, which is awesome, The conductor, or they played with the Berlin Philharmonic, Vienna Philharmonic, New York Philharmonic, Bayerische Rundfunk, the Chicago, Boston. He said, wow, but this is not impressive at all. You can get sometimes, because of help of people who knows how, you get that content. The only thing is important is, have you been re-invited? It's the only thing that counts. Have you been re-invited by all these incredible venues?
That's the big question.
That's the only question. You can be invited by so many. You win a competition, you've been invited there and there and there. But did they re-invite you? That's the only interesting thing.
Yeah. Last week I spoke to a young jazz musician who won an award a couple of years ago. And then that same year, a couple of months later, he played at the North Sea Jazz Festival, which is the biggest indoor jazz festival in the world.
I know.
Here in Rotterdam. And then this is a couple of years ago, and now he applied, for this year, and they said, well, all right, you can come, but you have to play for free.
Yeah, well, this is very, but this is kind of...
so...
But of course, the reality of this word, because it's a very tough word, you have sometimes a soloist, he plays with an orchestra, with a conductor, and it goes well, not more than well. So sometimes out of relief, out of respect, a conductor will say to the soloist, or to his parents, it's even worse, well, let's do something again together. But this is not what he's saying to his manager. So this will never happen, this re-invitation. But sometimes these musicians have the feeling Yeah, but he likes me, he wants to re-invite me. But it's not the reality, you see what I mean? Because out of policy, or to be polite, you very often say something, but there are so many other ones that are perhaps even better. So,
and it's the moment everybody's enthusiastic, euphoric.
Exactly.
And then you go, let's repeat this. And then the next day you're opening your computer and there's a zillion other emails waiting for you.
And somebody else comes, who's even better, or not only better. Sometimes friendships are being built between certain soloists and conductors, and it can be such a lonely career, also a conductor and as a pianist, or violinist, you go from one hotel to the other, you travel on your own. It can be very, very solitude, how you say, very
lonely.
Lonely. So if you sometimes they make a good contact and they like traveling together. So very often you have conductors who always like to play with the soloists because they have fun together. Of course, it must be on a professional level, of course.
Yeah, after all, they're human beings.
But sometimes I have especially young parents who try to persuade me to invite their sons or daughters, and it's so painful. They're so pushy. They're not realistic on the talent of their children.
Oh yeah. You have to
And what can I say then,
Yeah, you have to help them out of the dream.
But it can be so tough. That's why I respect all these young people and all these musicians that have made it, and they're always there, prepared to open their heart, their soul to the big audience,
I think a lot of parents, without realizing, are a big threat to their own children.
Oh, they can make they can destroy the life of many of these young kids, because for a parent, very, very, very often, I will not give an example. I heard a young pianist at an audition, or it's kind of a private thing, from Romania. The boy is kind of gifted physically, but he has so much to learn. And the father immediately sends me all kind of DVDs of his son playing live, and what do you think? And I don't know what to say, and it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing. But for the father, his son is kind of a genius, and I feel very bad for this young kid.
And then the kid himself
starts believing it.
And that's even worse.
Yeah. And then he can become very depressed because things will not go the way they're dreaming of,
Yeah, and then they get frustrated, depressed, and it's it's a tough thing.
I know.
Yeah, it's a tough thing.
But on the other hand, arts, it's I'm sometimes also jealous, I would have liked to dance on stage, perform on stage, and I can feel, I don't know,
But on the other hand, you made thousands and thousands of people so happy. Presenting the absolute world-class pianist here at the Concertgebouw and probably in many other places. So I think that's quite an achievement.
I don't know if it's an achievement, but it makes me happy when I hear because I owe money also to many pianists, because of this whole situation.
Wow.
And so, most of them said, Marco, but you introduced me here. You made my whole career. You are crazy?
Oh, that's nice. That's nice to hear. Yeah.
And this touches my heart, because I feel sometimes so guilty. But don't forget. I don't forget the past.
But that's actually the whole thing. You should never forget about people who helped you out in the past, and that happens a lot, especially with artists, because a lot of them are very self-centered.
Yeah.
And they just forget about a lot of things. I'm always very conscious and grateful for those people who helped me out, whether it was teachers or at a certain point in my career, like giving me an opportunity to play. Yeah, and I never forgot that. It's so important.
No, you should. Yeah, I completely agree.
Thank you, Marco.
No, thank you, Mike, and it was a pleasure. Next time, I don't know. Now I'm getting tired. Next time we can speak about so many other musicians.
Let's do that. I would love to make a series out of this, if you're okay with it. You're used to series.
The the problem is when I start talking, sometimes I cannot stop talking because so many things. I have memories from at the same moment. I have so many things coming into my brains, you know.
That's beautiful.
And memories, especially memories. Yeah.
So much to share. Thanks again.
Thank you very much, Mike. It was a pleasure, really a pleasure.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoy my podcast, then please subscribe, leave a rating and a review. Please visit my website, mikedelferro.com, where you also will find links to my other podcast, Self-Management for Musicians. You will also find links to my music and my socials. And of course, please share this podcast with anyone interested. Nothing beats the word of mouth. Thank you.